David Miller began blowing bubbles to soothe the distressed autistic girl, unaware that her billionaire mother was silently watching from afar. "Step away from her! That girl could bite!" The security guard's warning cracked through the marble lobby of Wardstone Corporation like a whip. Standing in the hallway with a mop still in hand, Marcus Williams froze as the chaos unfolded before his eyes. At the heart of the scene, a small blonde girl, around 6 years old, was curled up on the cold floor, rocking back and forth, arms locked tightly around her knees. Her bright blue eyes darted in panic, like birds frantically searching for a way out of a cage. Surrounding her were 5 suit-clad executives, stiff and clueless, muttering terms like episode and behavioral crisis under their breath. At 42, Marcus had spent 2 decades working with special needs children, first as an educator and later as the father of an autistic daughter. One look was all it took to recognize the signs of sensory overload, and it was just as obvious to him that none of these wealthy professionals had any clue how to handle it. "Would you mind if I tried something?" Marcus asked, stepping forward, his voice steady and composed, an anchor amid the rising panic. The security guard immediately threw out an arm to block him. "You're just the night janitor. Back off." The last staff member who got close was fired instantly. Marcus said nothing. Instead, he held the girl's gaze, and in that fleeting exchange, something unspoken passed between them. A quiet connection. He recognized that distant, disoriented look. He had once seen it in the eyes of his own daughter, Zoe. Without acknowledging the guard, Marcus calmly walked to his cleaning cart and picked up a small bottle of soap detergent. He then lowered himself onto the cold Italian marble, choosing to sit about 10 feet away from the child, close enough to be seen, far enough not to overwhelm. He dipped his fingers into the bucket of water and gently blew a stream of soap bubbles into the still air. 1, 2, 3, he counted softly. The girl's rocking began to slow, her gaze locked on the delicate bubbles, shimmering globes of light floating like whispered thoughts that hesitated to touch the ground. Marcus kept going, his voice a whisper, each bubble a tiny masterpiece, drifting away, taking a little of the tension with it. From the mezzanine above, a woman observed in silence. Gabrielle Ward, billionaire CEO of Wardstone Biotech, was no stranger to power. She'd stared down world leaders without blinking and dismantled corporate coups before her second cup of coffee. Yet now, as she watched a janitor soothe her daughter with nothing more than soap bubbles, she found herself breathless. Ava, her daughter, her enigma, her silent sorrow, was finally still. Not because of the elite therapist charging 15 grand a week, not because of the world-renowned experts flown in from Switzerland, but because of a black man in a janitor's uniform who had dared to sit on the cold floor and simply be present. Gabrielle descended in the elevator, each strike of her Louboutin heels against the marble echoing like judgment passed. As she approached, the gathered executives snapped to attention, adjusting their ties and posture reflexively. Marcus, however, didn't flinch. He remained where he was, still blowing bubbles, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, of the corporate tension gathering like a storm behind him. "Mr. Williams," Gabrielle's voice sliced through the air like a shard of broken crystal. "I need a word with you. Now." Slowly, Marcus rose to his feet, eyes lingering on the child. Ava had curled onto her side, serene now, watching a lone bubble dance above her as if it carried the last of her fear. He braced himself. This was it. 20 years of experience, gone in an instant of kindness. He expected termination. He expected punishment. But when he met Gabrielle's eyes, what he saw wasn't fury. It was gratitude. And Marcus knew anyone who truly understands the powerful understands this. Their gratitude is never free. It comes with a cost you never see until it's too late. If this story about how a simple act of compassion could alter 2 lives is resonating with you, make sure to subscribe, because what unfolded in that office over the next 15 minutes would completely change the game. Gabrielle Ward's office spanned the entire 42nd floor, its towering glass windows framing a breathtaking view of Manhattan, one worth more than most people earn in 10 years. Marcus stepped in cautiously, his rubber-soled shoes making a soft thud against the opulent Persian rug that likely cost more than his entire monthly income. "Sit," Gabrielle instructed, motioning toward a sleek leather chair, an item that probably matched the cost of a modest used car. She didn't sit herself. Instead, she remained behind her immaculate glass desk, deploying a posture she had mastered in countless high-stakes negotiations. Remain standing, control the room. "Where did you learn that?" she asked at last, her icy blue eyes locked on him. "The bubbles. That technique, whatever it was." Marcus inhaled slowly. "My daughter's autistic. I learned because I had to." "Your daughter?" Gabrielle repeated, the words foreign on her tongue, as though she were trying to pronounce a language she didn't quite understand. "What did you do? Watch a few YouTube videos? Attend a weekend workshop?" The condescension was veiled but unmistakable. Marcus picked up on it instantly. He'd heard it countless times before. 2 decades of working with wealthy parents who thought money equaled wisdom had sharpened his radar for that tone. "I was a special ed teacher for 17 years, he replied evenly. "Specialized in autism spectrum disorders. Columbia. Masters in educational psychology." A long silence followed. Gabrielle blinked. Once. Twice. Like a computer trying to process bad data. "Teacher," she repeated slowly, drawing the word out as if unsure whether to believe it. "And now you clean floors at night." "People have bills to pay," Marcus answered without flinching. "Budgets got slashed. Special ed programs were the first to go. There's not exactly a hiring frenzy for experts in children the system prefers not to see." For the first time in years, Gabrielle's polished executive composure began to slip. She leaned forward. "So let me get this straight. You're more qualified than most of the specialists I've hired for Eva, and you're scrubbing toilets." "I'm saying qualifications don't mean much if you can't connect," Marcus said, his tone steady. He leaned in just slightly. "How many experts have you brought in for Eva? 10? 20? All with degrees that look great on paper, and invoices that look even better." Her jaw clenched. 43, she said tightly. 43 professionals in 4 years. "How many got her to speak?" "None," Marcus nodded. "Because they came to fix her. I came to understand her." Gabrielle didn't reply right away. Instead, she stared at Marcus, really looked at him, as though seeing him for the first time. He didn't fit into any category she knew. A janitor who spoke like a professor. A black man with a master's degree in psychology. Someone she'd dismissed without a second thought, who now seemed to hold the very key she'd spent years trying to buy. "I want to hire you," Gabrielle said at last, "to work with Eva as a therapeutic consultant, part-time, $15,000 a month. Keep your current job until we see if it's a good fit." Marcus chuckled, a warm, resonant sound that echoed against the marble and steel walls of her high-rise office. "Ms. Ward," he said, "you're not offering me employment. You're trying to pay your way out of a moral crisis." Her expression tightened in an instant. "Excuse me? You just realized you misjudged someone based on their uniform and their skin color. And now you're trying to fix that mistake by turning me into another name on your payroll. But this isn't about helping Eva. This is about soothing your conscience." "I'm not prejudiced," Gabrielle snapped, her voice sharp, crystalline. "Then why assume I was just an unqualified janitor?" Marcus countered. "Why didn't you ask who I was before deciding I wasn't good enough to be around your child?" Gabrielle started to respond, then stopped. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. In that moment, her finely tuned corporate defenses cracked. Someone had peeled back the layers and revealed a truth she didn't want to face. Marcus stood slowly. "What Ava needs isn't another high-priced specialist," he said. "She needs someone who sees her, not as a case to solve, but as a person to understand." Gabrielle's voice softened, stripped of its usual authority. "Then what are you suggesting?" "Time," Marcus replied. "No cameras, no countdowns, no weekly summaries. Just time. Space to be herself without being measured." Then he smiled, not the polite, guarded smile he wore for managers and executives, but something sincere, something that hinted at quiet defiance. "And in return," he added, "maybe your daughter will start to believe that the world isn't just full of people trying to fix her." He turned to leave, pausing just before the door. "Oh, and Ms. Ward, next time someone steps in to help your daughter, try asking about their experience before assuming they don't have any. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Gabrielle alone with a realization more unsettling than any courtroom loss or financial setback. She had almost overlooked exactly what she'd spent years searching for because of her own unconscious bias. What she didn't realize, however, was that Marcus Williams had spent 4 long years quietly observing the powerful, sweeping their floors, hearing their secrets, witnessing their humanity when they thought no one was watching. And now, for the first time, one of them had opened the door wide enough for him to prove what he had always known. Wisdom and compassion don't wear labels, and true value has nothing to do with what's printed on a resume or stitched on a uniform. It took 3 days for Gabrielle Ward to break the silence. The call came during Marcus's night shift, and her voice, stripped of its usual executive authority, carried a tremor of uncertainty. "Eva hasn't eaten since we spoke," she said abruptly. "She hasn't drawn. She hasn't spoken. She's slipping backward." Marcus, in the middle of scrubbing the executive bathroom, paused. "What exactly are you asking me for?" "I want you to take the job," Gabrielle said. "Please." "I haven't changed my conditions," Marcus replied evenly. "No oversight, no timers, no reports." "Agreed." The following morning, Marcus arrived at Gabrielle's Upper East Side penthouse. Not alone, but with his 16-year-old daughter, Zoe, at his side. The teenager moved with the quiet assurance of someone who saw more than she spoke, her backpack filled with art supplies. "I thought Eva might respond better to someone nearer her own age," Marcus explained as Gabrielle opened the door, visibly taken aback. "She's 16, Gabrielle said, eyes narrowing. "Eva is only 8. Sometimes the age gap provides just enough distance to feel safe. Peers can be overwhelming. Older kids can offer quiet space." Zoe offered a soft, respectful smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Ward. My dad told me a little about Eva. I brought a few things I thought she might like." Gabrielle studied the girl carefully. Her grace, her calmness, the quiet strength in the way she entered the home like she belonged there. It was unnerving. Gabrielle wasn't used to seeing that kind of ease in someone so young, especially from a background she hadn't expected to carry such depth. Inside, Eva sat in her usual corner, curled in on herself. But the moment she spotted Zoe, something shifted. Her eyes, always wary, softened with curiosity. Zoe knelt on the floor as if it were the most natural thing in the world, unzipping her backpack and pulling out watercolors and textured paper. "Hi, Ava, I'm Zoe," she said gently. "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to. I just thought we could paint together." What followed over the next 2 hours left Gabrielle completely unmoored. Not only did Eva crawl closer to Zoe, but she began mixing paints, experimenting with hues she'd never touched before. And as Zoe spun quiet little tales about the colors, how blue was the sky reaching for the earth, how yellow was the sun chuckling in the morning, Ava whispered her first word in days. "Orange," Zoe beamed. "Exactly. Orange happens when red and yellow decide to dance." From the doorway, Marcus observed everything, not just Ava's responses, but Gabrielle's. He noticed the way her hands trembled slightly as she recorded on her phone, a habit born from years of corporate habit, but driven now by something more. Wonder, maybe even hope. For the first time, Gabrielle wasn't watching her daughter as a case study or a crisis, but as a child, alive in a moment of connection. And yet, the peace was fragile. It would not last. "Mrs. Ward," came a voice from the intercom. "Dr. Peaton has arrived for his scheduled session with Eva." Gabrielle's expression stiffened. "I completely forgot." Dr. Harrison Peaton was the quintessential specialist Gabrielle had once considered indispensable. Harvard pedigree, tailored suits, staggering fees, and an ego that seemed to enter any space a full minute before he did. At 52, he had made a fortune catering to elite families, charging $15,000 per session for interventions barely more sophisticated than those in beginner-level textbooks. "Gabrielle, my dear," he announced as he stepped into the penthouse, breezing past Marcus and Zoe without so much as a glance. "Let's take a look at how our little Ava's doing today." But the scene in front of him brought him to a full stop. Ava was sitting peacefully on the floor, painting beside Zoe, while Marcus observed quietly, jotting notes into a weathered notebook. "What is this?" Peaton asked, his tone steeped in professional disdain. "Who are these people?" "Dr. Peaton," Gabrielle said, keeping her voice measured. "This is Marcus Williams and his daughter Zoe. They've been helping Eva." Peaton let out a derisive snort. Helping? Gabrielle, you can't just let unqualified individuals work with a child who needs clinical care. That's reckless, potentially dangerous. Marcus rose from his seat, his presence suddenly more imposing. Dr. Peaton, is it? I've read some of your published work. Interesting how your innovative strategies mirror the techniques we special ed teachers were already using a decade ago. Teachers, Peaton sneered. Ah, so you're one of them. Let me guess, associate degree from a community college? You think love and patience are enough to fix everything? Masters from Columbia, Marcus said calmly. Educational psychology. 17 years of hands-on experience. And you're right, I do believe love and patience go a lot further than arrogance and inflated billing. The tension in the room tightened. Ava had stopped painting. Her small shoulders rose slightly, her eyes flitting from adult to adult, sensing the conflict. Baton's voice chilled. If you intend to continue using my services, I'll need assurances that these amateurs are kept away from Eva's care. What's happening here is wholly unprofessional. Gabrielle hesitated. Her gaze moved to Eva, who had edged closer to Zoe without realizing it, then to Marcus, who stood calm and grounded despite the provocation. Finally, her eyes settled on Peyton, his posture rigid, brimming with the kind of authority she'd been conditioned to obey. Dr. Peyton, she said slowly, perhaps we should reschedule for another time. He snapped his briefcase shut. If that's how you choose to manage your daughter's treatment, he said icily, I won't be responsible for what follows. When this experiment inevitably fails, I'll be exactly where I've always been. My number hasn't changed. With that, he walked out, the door clicking behind him. The silence that followed felt thick. Ava resumed painting, but her brushstrokes had shifted, quicker, less precise, mirroring the emotional ripple left behind. Does he always speak like that? Zoe asked gently. Gabrielle gave a slow nod. Most of them do, so sure of everything. Certainty, Marcus murmured, writing in his notebook without looking up, is a privilege granted to those who've never had to question themselves. That night, long after Marcus and Zoe had gone, Gabrielle lay awake, her mind replaying everything she had seen. For the first time in years, Ava had gone 3 full hours without a single meltdown. She had explored new colors. She had engaged with someone really engaged. And the person responsible for that breakthrough? He'd been casually dismissed by a man in an expensive suit who earned more in 1 hour than Marcus did in 8 weeks. What Gabrielle didn't realize was that during those same 3 hours, Marcus hadn't just been observing Ava. He'd been watching her too. Every flicker of emotion, each pause, every subtle flicker of doubt. He had recorded them all, methodically, in his worn notebook. Because over years of silently cleaning boardrooms and corner offices, Marcus Williams had uncovered a hard truth. The world's most powerful people almost never face their own contradictions. And when they finally do, it can shake them to their core. Later that night, as he made his way through the dim streets toward the subway station, Marcus pulled out his phone. He opened a thread he hadn't touched in months and typed a short message. I need a favor tomorrow night. It's about the project we talked about. The reply came almost instantly. Thought you scrapped that plan. I let a lot of things go after my wife died, Marcus wrote back. But some fights are worth returning to, especially when you realize you've just stepped onto the right battlefield. The emergency meeting of the Wardstone Biotech Medical Board was held on a dreary Thursday morning, hastily convened by Dr. Peaton after discovering that Marcus had officially been hired as Eva's therapeutic consultant. The conference room reeked of overpriced coffee and wounded pride. This is outrageous, Peaton barked, slamming a folder onto the glass table. A corporation of Wardstone's standing cannot afford to let unqualified imposters interfere with legitimate medical care. Dr. Miranda Foster, a well-known child neuropsychiatrist, nodded eagerly. Absolutely, soap bubble therapy? It's nothing more than dangerous pseudoscience. At the head of the table, Gabrielle sat quietly, her laptop open, though her attention drifted frequently to her phone. Ava had been sending her photos of paintings, of smiles, of moments with Zoe that Gabrielle hadn't seen in years. Ms. Ward, Peaton leaned forward, voice sharpened. I'll be blunt. If this experiment continues, I'll have no choice but to withdraw from Eva's treatment. My professional reputation is at stake. Your reputation, Gabrielle echoed slowly, is based on What exactly, Dr. Peaton? A long, uncomfortable silence followed. In 2 years under his supervision, Eva had made little, if any, discernible progress. Just then the door opened. Marcus stepped in, not in his usual janitor's uniform, but wearing a modest, well-fitted suit and carrying a leather briefcase. Beside him was a poised, silver-haired woman no one seemed to recognize. "Thank you, Mrs. Ward, for allowing me to speak," Marcus began, his tone calm, despite the daggers being thrown at him through glares. "You weren't invited," Dr. Foster snapped. "Actually," the older woman beside Marcus said with a cool smile, "I asked him to join. Dr. Sarah Chun, editor-in-chief of the Journal of Child Psychology. I'm here today to address some troubling discrepancies that have come to light." Peyton visibly blanched. Marcus opened his briefcase and slid several documents across the table. "Over the past 4 years, while working in this building at night, I came across various conversations and documents, not by choice, but by proximity. Eventually, I started keeping records." He gestured to the papers. "These are your reports, Dr. Peaton, 18 months worth. Copy-pasted content, only the dates changed. If this is your idea of personalized care, I'd hate to see your definition of negligence." That's a violation of privacy," Peaton stammered. "No," Dr. Chun said coldly. "That's documentation of medical fraud. Billing $15,000 per session for recycled reports is a criminal offense." The room erupted into stunned silence. Marcus turned his attention to Dr. Foster. "These are recordings, captured inadvertently by the office's cleaning system, of you discussing how to deliberately prolong treatment plans for affluent clients. The files are clear and complete." Foster bolted to his feet, his chair toppling behind him. "I'll sue all of you!" "With what funds?" Marcus replied smoothly. "The federal investigation into your billing practices started this morning, based on the evidence I've been collecting over the past 4 years." Gabrielle sat motionless, watching the empire of self-serving experts she once trusted crumble like a poorly laid foundation. The very people who had monetized her daughter's struggles were now facing the consequences of their exploitation. "And there's more," Marcus continued, opening another folder. "Eva wasn't the only victim. I've found documentation for 17 other children. Families billed for useless, drawn-out treatments while their children remain stagnant." Desperate, Peaton tried to recover his footing. "You're just a janitor with a savior complex. No court will take you seriously." Marcus laughed, deep, genuine, and unshaken. "You're absolutely right. I am a janitor, but I'm also the janitor who spent 1,400 nights in this building, who overheard your calls, photographed the files you left exposed, and listened as you plotted how to turn pain into profit." Then turning to Gabrielle, he added, "And I'm the man who realized your daughter didn't need more credentials. She needed someone who saw her as more than a case number." Piton rose stiffly. "This isn't over. I still have influence." "You had influence," Dr. Chun corrected coolly. "As of today, the state medical board is being notified. Your licenses are under review. And the families you exploited? They've already been connected with malpractice attorneys." Peaton and Foster fled the room like disgraced aristocrats. Gabrielle remained, seated between the woman who had helped expose a system and the man who had quietly dismantled it. "Why did you help me?" she asked softly. Marcus closed his briefcase with quiet finality. "Because Eva deserves someone willing to fight for her, and because sometimes justice needs witnesses the world overlooks." At that moment, Gabrielle's phone buzzed. A message from Zoe. Eva just said her first full sentence, "Daddy Marcus coming back tomorrow." Gabrielle looked up at Marcus, eyes shining. "She called you Daddy." Marcus smiled, gentle and unpretentious. "Kids know. They always do. Doesn't matter what title's on your business card or how much you charge per hour." What none of them knew, however, was that this was just the beginning. Because when you confront a system built on privilege and greed, the waves you send out don't stop at the shoreline. They spread, reaching lives far beyond the one you set out to save. 6 months later, Marcus Williams stood center stage beneath the lights of the Jacob Javits Convention Center, greeted by thunderous applause from over 3,000 mental health professionals attending the National Autism Congress. Beside him, Eva held a pink microphone she'd carefully picked out for this moment. Her shy smile widened as she spoke into it with quiet confidence. "My name is Eva," she said, her voice echoing across the vast auditorium. And this is Daddy Marcus. He taught me that being different doesn't mean you're broken. The crowd erupted in cheers. In the front row, Gabrielle wiped away tears, openly, without shame, no longer concerned with the image she once curated so carefully. In another world, Peyton and Foster might have been there sitting among the elite, but in this one, they had become cautionary tales. The federal investigations had left each with $2 million in fines, revoked licenses, and enough malpractice lawsuits to haunt the next decade of their lives. Piton now worked in a Newark call center, selling life insurance to people who didn't want to listen. Foster had retreated to Montana, driving for Uber and trying to forget the empire he once ruled. Back on stage, Marcus smiled as he addressed the audience. The Williams Ward Program for Neurodiverse Inclusion is more than just therapy. It's a shift in how we see children, not as problems to fix, but as individuals with gifts the world hasn't yet learned to recognize. The foundation he and Gabrielle had built was already changing lives. More than 500 educators had been trained in its approach. The bubble therapy, once dismissed as novelty, had been validated in 17 peer-reviewed studies, demonstrating significantly better outcomes than conventional methods in 86% of cases. Zoe, now 17, had grown into a fierce and eloquent advocate. Her speech before Congress just 3 months earlier had catalyzed sweeping legislation, a federal law ensuring public health access to alternative therapies for neurodiverse children. What moves me most, Marcus continued, scanning the crowd, is that Ava isn't alone anymore. We now have 237 children in the program, each finding their voice in colors, in sounds, in movement. And their parents, executives, teachers, doctors are learning what no textbook ever taught them, that love doesn't follow protocol. Gabrielle had stepped down from her role as president of Warstone Biotech. The woman who once measured success in market shares in boardroom deals now poured her energy and her fortune into building inclusion centers across 16 states. The Wall Street Journal had honored her transformation with a front-page story titled, "From the Boardroom to the Floor, How a CEO Learned to Lead on Her Knees." As the camera zoomed in, Marcus turned to the live feed. People often ask if I'm bitter about the years I spent cleaning bathrooms instead of teaching. But those years gave me what no academic program could. They taught me how to watch closely, how to listen deeply, and how to see worth where others saw none. Ava stepped forward again, her voice even steadier this time. Daddy Marcus says we're all works of art. Some of us just need different paints. In the audience, parents cried without restraint. Therapists scribbled furious notes. Journalists captured every word from the girl the world had once written off as unreachable. Marcus glanced out into the sea of standing ovation, his eyes reflecting a quiet triumph. "The irony," he said, voice thick with meaning, "is that the men who tried to silence me only amplified my voice." He smiled gently. Dr. Peaton was right about one thing. I was just a janitor. What he didn't realize is that janitors spend years watching, listening, absorbing, and when we finally choose to speak, he paused, letting the silence wrap around the moment. We have a lot to say. The audience rose again, this time as one. Cameras flashed, phones filmed, social media lit up with hashtags. Janitor teacher, Hajiva Corps. And somewhere behind every standing ovation, behind every echo of applause, was a single truth. Love, seen and spoken at the right time, can change everything. That evening, beneath the glow of chandeliers at the gala dinner, Marcus Williams took the stage to accept the National Award for Innovation in Special Education. As the audience rose in applause, he spoke not of achievements, but of children who had been mislabeled as broken when they were simply misunderstood, and of the parents brave enough to challenge experts who cloaked prejudice in scientific jargon and charged a fortune for it. On the ride home, Eva dozed peacefully in Gabrielle's lap, her fingers still streaked with blue and yellow from the artwork she'd proudly led earlier in the evening. Zoe, ever focused and thoughtful, edited video clips on her laptop, another entry in the visual diary of a family that had quietly redefined what normal looked like. As the city lights shimmered past the car windows, Gabrielle turned to Marcus. "Do you know what changed everything?" she asked softly. "What?" he replied. "You refused to stay in the role they gave you. If you had accepted being invisible, just another janitor, Ava would still be silent. I'd still be writing checks to frauds in white coats, and 237 families would still be chasing hope down the wrong hallways. Marcus offered a quiet smile. Sometimes, he said, the best revenge isn't taking down the people who underestimated you. It's living in a way that proves them so spectacularly wrong the entire world has no choice but to notice. Today, the Williams Method is taught at 43 universities across the country. At 12, Eva is a celebrated young artist, her paintings displayed in New York galleries, with every dollar earned going to support inclusion programs for neurodiverse children. And Marcus? He never scrubbed another floor. But in his office behind glass hangs his old janitor's uniform. Below it, a small plaque reads, "A reminder of when people thought they knew who I was." If this story moved you, if it reminded you that purpose can be born from prejudice, that kindness can break walls when credentials can't, subscribe to this channel. Because the greatest revolutions begin not with noise, but with the quiet courage to refuse the place others assign us, and to build a world where every child is free to thrive, not just survive.